The planet was unlike anything the humans had ever seen before. When the transport ship first entered the atmosphere of Class Zero, everyone aboard had been nervous, even though none of them had said it aloud. The world they were about to land on had a reputation. Class Zero planets were known throughout the galaxy as the deadliest worlds, a place where only the most resilient species dared to even consider stepping foot. This particular planet, Zorath 7, was one such world. It was filled with enormous, terrifying creatures, unpredictable weather, and environments that could swallow a person whole in seconds. The humans had been told that survival was the goal, but no one knew what would happen once they landed. The transport ship made a rough landing, shaking as the massive thrusters burned through the atmosphere. The air outside was thick with humidity, the sky dark and overcast. The crew members, though trained for extreme environments, were unsure of what to expect. But they had been chosen because they weren't just any crew. They were the best. Highly trained and resourceful, they were the first humans ever to be sent to this kind of place with one task: survive for 30 days. If they succeeded, they would prove that humans were capable of surviving even the most hostile worlds in the galaxy. If they failed, the consequences were unknown. As the crew disembarked from the ship, the first thing they noticed was the silence. It wasn't the kind of silence you'd expect on a barren planet. It was alive, almost as if the land itself was holding its breath. The sky above them seemed to stretch forever, an ominous gray, but the air was thick and warm, making every breath feel heavy. Trees, twisted and jagged, loomed above them like silent sentinels, and the ground below was covered in soft, spongy moss that made each step feel uncertain. Captain Alden, the leader of the group, was the first to speak. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of tension beneath it. "All right, everyone, stick together. Stay sharp. This is unlike anything we've ever trained for. Stay focused." The crew nodded, their expressions a mixture of excitement and dread. They had known this mission was dangerous, but being here, in the middle of it, felt entirely different. Everyone had heard the stories of how creatures from Class Zero planets could tear a species apart in minutes, how the very environment could turn lethal at the slightest misstep. But none of that mattered now. They were here, and they had a job to do. The first few hours on Zorath 7 were surprisingly quiet. There were no immediate signs of the aggressive wildlife the planet was known for. The team worked together to set up a small camp near the landing site. It was a simple camp: tent, supplies, and basic gear. But it was enough. For now. As the sun dipped behind the jagged mountains in the distance, the temperature dropped quickly, and a strange, eerie fog began to roll in from the valley below. That was when they first heard the sound. It was faint at first, just a low rumble that seemed to come from deep within the ground. It wasn't like anything they had ever heard before, not like the sounds of storms or creatures. It was something else, unnatural. The ground beneath their feet vibrated slightly, and the trees seemed to sway, though the air was still. Captain Alden immediately held up his hand, signaling for the crew to stop. "Do you hear that?" he asked quietly. The team froze, listening. It was almost like a growl, but so deep and distant that it sent a shiver down their spines. The noise grew louder, almost as if the planet itself was alive. It was unsettling, like the entire world was beginning to wake up around them. The crew exchanged nervous glances, each one silently wondering if this was the beginning of the challenge they had been warned about. Alden glanced up at the dark sky, his face grim. "Stay alert. It's probably nothing, but it's better to be cautious." But it wasn't nothing. As the night wore on, the rumbling sound continued, growing louder with every passing hour. The crew stayed inside their tents, weapons close by, unsure of what was coming. The eerie fog grew thicker, and the air grew heavy with the scent of decay, like something was rotting beneath the surface of the planet. It was impossible to sleep. Everyone lay awake, listening to the persistent rumble. No one dared to speak, each person too aware that they had no idea what the next day would bring. The next morning, the fog had lifted, but the strange noise had not. In fact, it seemed to be louder, almost closer. The ground was still vibrating under their feet, as if some massive creature was moving beneath the surface of the planet. The crew gathered around the fire as Alden briefed them. "We're not alone here," Alden said, his voice low and steady. "Something is causing these vibrations, but we need to stay calm. We don't know what it is yet." One of the crew members, Lieutenant Ramirez, squinted at the horizon, her hand shading her eyes. "We should investigate. If we stay in the camp, we'll just be sitting ducks. We need to know what's out there." "I agree," said Sergeant Hughes, another member of the team. "It's better to face whatever it is head-on, rather than wait for it to come to us." Alden looked at the rest of the team. Considering their suggestions, it was clear they were all on edge, but they were also experienced. They had trained for months for this very moment. "All right, let's do a sweep. But stay in pairs. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." The team split into pairs and began moving out, carefully making their way into the dense jungle. As they walked, the vibrations continued. The ground beneath them seemed to pulse with an almost rhythmic energy, like a heartbeat. It felt strange, unnatural. Something wasn't right. They walked for hours, following the vibrations, which were now almost impossible to ignore. Every few minutes, they would stop and check their surroundings, but the jungle was eerily still. There was no sign of wildlife, no birds or small creatures scurrying through the underbrush. It was as if the entire ecosystem had gone silent. The only sound was the continuous rumble deep beneath their feet. Then, without warning, the ground in front of them split open with a violent crack. A massive fissure stretched out across the jungle, the earth shaking violently as a thick, black smoke began to pour out from the crack. The team jumped back in shock, weapons drawn and ready. Alden's heart raced as he scanned the area, trying to understand what was happening. "What the hell is that?" Ramirez shouted, pointing at the smoke. Before anyone could answer, the sound of something large moving beneath them grew louder, almost deafening. The earth trembled with each passing moment, and the team's nerves were on edge. They were standing on a ticking time bomb, and they didn't know how much time they had left. Alden's mind raced. Fall back. Get back to camp now. But as they turned to run, a shape emerged from the smoke. It was massive, too large to comprehend fully, moving too fast for their eyes to follow. The ground beneath it cracked and splintered as the creature barreled through the jungle, its massive claws cutting into the earth as it chased them. The rumbling sound was no longer distant. It was right on top of them. The team sprinted back toward the camp, the creature gaining on them with terrifying speed. They reached the clearing where their ship had landed, but there was no time to make it back inside. The creature was too close. Alden's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, but there was one thing he knew for certain. The planet wasn't just a test. It was alive, and it was hunting them. The sound, the vibrations, it was all part of the planet's design. They were not just survivors. They were prey. The team barely made it back to the camp, taking cover behind the wreckage of their ship as the massive creature let out an ear-piercing roar that shook the very air around them. The ground beneath them trembled violently, and Alden could feel the weight of their situation sink in. This wasn't just a survival test. This was something far worse. They had landed on a world that wasn't meant to be conquered, and the planet was just beginning its hunt. The rumbling grew louder, echoing through the dense trees as the team huddled behind the wreckage of their transport ship. The massive creature, with its glowing red eyes, was no longer a distant shadow. It was right in front of them, its enormous form emerging from the black smoke rising from the crack in the earth. The ground beneath their feet shook violently with every step the beast took. The air grew thick, and the pungent smell of sulfur filled their nostrils, choking them. Sweat dripped down their faces, a mix of fear and exertion. Captain Alden was the first to break the silence. "We need to move. Now." His voice was tight with panic, But his mind was sharp, focused. This wasn't the first time he'd faced danger, but this creature was different. This planet was different. They weren't just on a test ground. They were fighting for their lives. Lieutenant Ramirez, holding her pulse rifle tight in her hands, scanned the area. Which way? We're boxed in. The creature let out another deafening roar, its enormous jaws snapping open and shut as it lumbered closer. It was a nightmare made real, its dark, scaly skin shimmering in the dim light, its legs like thick tree trunks that barely seemed to touch the ground. It had an almost hypnotic, terrifying presence. The team had faced plenty of challenges, but nothing like this. "Take cover," Alden shouted. "Find anything to block the way." The team split up in seconds, running toward different parts of the wreckage, taking cover behind the broken pieces of metal. Ramirez and Sergeant Hughes took the rear, keeping their weapons aimed at the advancing creature, but neither of them dared to fire just yet. The creature's thick hide would likely absorb anything they shot at it. Alden's mind raced. There had to be a way out of this, but every second that passed made it clearer. This wasn't some test designed to challenge their survival skills. This planet was alive in ways they didn't yet understand, and they were in the middle of its feeding ground. The creature paused, sniffing the air as it loomed just a few meters from their hiding spot. Its eyes locked onto Alden, its massive head tilting slightly to the side. It was studying them. The growl that followed sent a chill down his spine. "Whatever it is, it's not afraid of us," Hughes muttered under his breath. Alden nodded grimly. "We can't just wait for it to finish us off. We need to find a way to distract it." Just then, a crackling noise echoed through their comm system. A voice came through, distorted but clear enough for them to hear. "Captain Alden, this is Commander Lee. Do you copy?" Alden's heart skipped a beat. It was a miracle that the comms were still working, given the unstable conditions. "Lee, is that you? Where are you?" "We're just outside your position. We've been tracking the creature's movements. It's part of the trial. They're testing us. You have to get to the backup ship. We've located its coordinates." Alden clenched his fists. "How long do we have?" "Not long," Lee replied. "The planet is reacting to your presence. The creature is just the first wave. We're seeing readings of massive seismic activity. The planet itself is waking up. You need to move now." The transmission cut off, and the connection was lost, leaving the crew with only the sound of the creature's heavy breathing. "Backup ship. That's our only way out?" Ramirez asked, her voice strained. "That's the plan," Alden said, his jaw clenched tight. He looked at the others. "We need to run. Stay together. Now." With the creature still distracted, Alden motioned for the crew to move. They dashed through the wreckage, trying to keep their steps light, avoiding any noise that might alert the beast to their escape. Every step felt like it might be their last, but the backup ship was their only hope. If they didn't make it there in time, they would be trapped on this world, at the mercy of whatever creatures lurked in the shadows. They moved fast, their boots pounding against the uneven ground, their hearts racing in their chests. The creature let out another terrifying roar, but this time it was distant, too distant. Alden risked a glance behind him. The creature hadn't followed them yet, but he could feel it, like a dark presence just waiting for them to slip up. They reached the coordinates for the backup ship after what felt like hours, though it had only been a few minutes. The ship was a small, compact vessel designed for short-range travel, equipped with just enough power to escape a hostile environment. It had been left hidden in a cave, far from the landing site. The door slid open automatically, and the crew rushed inside, with Alden closing it behind them. As they buckled into their seats, the ship's engines roared to life. They were moving, but there was a sudden pressure in the air as the ship began to lift off the ground. The tension in the cabin was palpable. They had made it to the ship, but they weren't safe yet, not by a long shot. Alden quickly turned to the control panel, his fingers flying over the buttons. "Lee, this is Alden. We're in the backup ship. We're heading out. "What's the situation?" But there was no response. Just static. "Damn it," Alden muttered, his eyes flicking over to the outside view. He saw the massive creature below, still standing in the clearing. But it wasn't alone. Other shapes were beginning to emerge from the trees. Massive creatures, some with long claws, others with glowing eyes and sleek bodies. The sounds of growling filled the air, and the ground beneath them trembled again, as if the entire planet was coming to life, responding to their presence. "It's not over," Ramirez said, her voice low. "The planet's going to try to kill us. It's using everything it has. We need to leave." "Now," Alden said, his voice firm. He hit a series of buttons, and the ship's thrusters roared to life, propelling them upwards. But the planet wasn't letting them go that easily. As they broke through the atmosphere and into space, the ground beneath them rumbled one last time. The planet seemed to roar, its cry of rage reverberating through the ship, but they were already too high up. They had made it. For now. But Alden couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't escaped. They had only just begun. The planet had tested them, but the real trial was just beginning. They weren't just dealing with a hostile environment. They were dealing with a world that had a mind of its own, a world that would never stop trying to destroy them. And that, Alden realized with a sinking feeling, was only the beginning. The backup ship was small, but it was built for speed. Alden gripped the controls tightly as the planet's surface receded beneath them, and the monstrous shapes they had seen below faded into the distance. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. No growling, no rumbling, just the hum of the engines as they cut through the vast emptiness of space. But the silence was deceptive. The calm was just a temporary reprieve. Alden's mind raced as he stared out of the cockpit, his fingers still moving over the ship's control panel. Despite the relief of escaping the planet's surface, his instincts told him something wasn't right. The creature they had encountered wasn't the only danger. The rumbling, the tremors, the eerie stillness that had settled over Zoreth 7. It was all connected. He could feel it. Whatever they had awoken on that planet, it wasn't just an isolated incident. The planet itself seemed to have a life of its own, a force that was now aware of their presence, and it would never let them forget it. Alden's thoughts were interrupted by the crackle of static over the comms. He quickly adjusted the frequency, hoping for some kind of response. "This is Captain Alden. Can anyone hear me?" His voice echoed through the silence in the ship. Nothing. Static. His pulse quickened. "Lee? Commander Lee, do you copy?" He tried again, louder this time, his eyes scanning the surrounding darkness of space. But there was no response. A moment passed before Lieutenant Ramirez, sitting in the seat next to Alden, broke the silence. Her face was tense, her brow furrowed as she looked at the readings on her screen. "Captain, we're picking up unusual readings. Something's not right." Alden glanced at the monitor she was pointing to. There was a flicker of data coming through, faint but persistent. A set of coordinates appeared on the screen, with a warning in red blinking next to them. "Unknown threat detected." "What is it?" Alden asked, his voice low and serious. "I'm not sure," Ramirez replied, typing quickly to adjust the ship's sensors. "It's too irregular to pinpoint, but these readings are unlike anything we've encountered before. It's almost like..." Before she could finish her sentence, the ship jolted violently. The sudden impact sent both Alden and Ramirez forward, their safety restraints barely holding them in place as the ship shook uncontrollably. "Hold on," Alden shouted as he tried to steady the ship. The emergency lights blinked on, casting an eerie red glow over the cabin. The controls were going haywire, flashing warnings and alarms. Ramirez's eyes widened as she looked at the sensor panel. "Captain, it's the planet. It's pulling us back in." Alden's heart skipped a beat. "That's impossible. We're too far out of its gravity well." But the ship kept shaking. The massive force from below wasn't just gravitational. It was something more. Something powerful, Something that felt like the planet itself was reaching out, grabbing hold of them, pulling them back toward its surface. "We're going to be pulled back in if we don't do something," Ramirez yelled. She punched at the control panel, trying to override the ship's systems to break free. But the force of whatever was pulling them was too much. "We need to outpace it," Alden gritted through his teeth. His hands were a blur on the controls, his mind focused entirely on the task ahead. He punched in commands, boosting the ship's engines to their maximum capacity, but the pull only seemed to grow stronger. The ship veered sharply to one side, nearly throwing them off course. Come on," Alden muttered, pushing the thrusters to full power, but it was no use. The planet's grip on them was like a vice, unrelenting and tightening. Suddenly, a voice broke through the chaos, crackling over the comms. It was faint, but unmistakable. "Captain Alden, do you copy?" Alden's eyes widened. "Lee, is that you?" There was a pause, followed by more crackling. Then the voice returned, strained but clear. "It's me, Captain. We're monitoring your trajectory. The planet's gravitational anomaly. It's not natural. It's some kind of force field. You've got to get clear of it, fast." "How do we do that?" Alden asked, his hand still desperately trying to maintain control of the ship. "There's a hidden route," Lee said, his voice urgent. "We have coordinates. Just follow them. They'll lead you to a break in the anomaly. It's the only chance you've got." Alden nodded, his mind working quickly. He had no choice but to trust Lee. The coordinates appeared on his screen as a flashing beacon, and despite the force pulling them back toward the planet, Alden veered the ship in that direction. The controls felt sluggish, as if the planet itself was resisting every move, but Alden pushed forward. Minutes felt like hours as the ship fought against the invisible force dragging it downward. The flashing lights on the control panel seemed to blink in time with his heartbeat. The ship groaned under the pressure, and Alden's grip tightened on the controls. Then, suddenly, there was a sharp jolt. The ship lurched forward with a force that threw everyone back in their seats. The control panel buzzed with life as the ship broke through the barrier, the force field letting go of them like a hand releasing a tightly held object. They were free. For a moment, there was silence. The ship had broken free from the planet's gravitational anomaly. Alden took a deep breath, his hands trembling as he stabilized the ship. He could feel the tension slowly leaving his body. But it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. "Status?" Alden asked, his voice hoarse. "We're clear of the anomaly," Ramirez replied, her voice quieter than usual. "But the planet? I don't think it's done with us yet." Alden looked out of the cockpit window, his eyes scanning the space around them. The distant glow of Zoreth 7 was still visible, but now it was just a dark, menacing sphere, suspended in the vastness of space. The gravitational anomaly was fading, but there was something else in the air, a presence, as if the planet was still watching them, waiting. "We need to regroup," Alden said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at the back of his mind. "Get the comms back online. I need to contact Lee and figure out what we're dealing with." Ramirez nodded and moved to the communications console, typing in commands to restore the link. The silence in the ship was heavy, but it was a different kind of silence now, one of tension, of something unknown just beyond their reach. As Ramirez worked, Alden stared out into the vast, empty space, his thoughts racing. The planet, Zoreth 7, wasn't just trying to kill them. It was using its power to manipulate them, to pull them back, to test them. And it was only getting started. Whatever this planet was, it wasn't just alive, it was intelligent. It had a purpose, and it wasn't going to stop until it had tested every last bit of the crew. Alden knew one thing for certain. This mission was far from over. The true test had only just begun. And this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about something far bigger, something that no one had anticipated. The galaxy had never seen a planet like Zoreth 7, and they were about to learn just how dangerous it could truly be. The emergency lights blinked in the cockpit, casting an eerie red glow as Alden sat motionless, staring at the screen in front of him. The ship was steady now, but the unsettling feeling still hung in the air like a cloud, thick and heavy. Zorath 7, what they had thought was merely a dangerous testing ground, had turned out to be far more than they could have ever imagined. The creature, the strange gravitational anomaly, the planet itself. It wasn't just an environment. It was alive, aware, and it wasn't going to let them leave so easily. "Captain, we've restored the comms," Ramirez called out from the back of the cockpit. She had her fingers dancing over the control panel, working furiously to reconnect to the command ship. Alden's eyes flicked to her as she worked, his mind still reeling from what they had just escaped. "I need to speak with Lee," Alden said. His voice was low, but firm, as if grounding himself in the reality of their situation. He was the captain, and it was his responsibility to keep the crew together, to keep them safe. Ramirez nodded, pressing a few more buttons before a crackling voice filled the air. "This is Commander Lee. Captain Alden, do you copy?" Alden exhaled in relief. "Lee, it's good to hear your voice. What's going on? What the hell is happening on that planet?" Lee's voice came back, strained and urgent. "Captain, we've been monitoring your escape, but things are worse than we anticipated. Zorath 7 isn't just hostile. It's alive. I don't know how, but it has a consciousness. We've run simulations on the planet's reactions to external stimuli, but this wasn't in the data. The gravitational anomaly you encountered, that wasn't just a natural force. It's part of the planet's defense mechanism. It's trying to trap you, to keep you there. And it won't stop until it gets what it wants." Alden clenched his fists around the armrests of his seat, his mind working through Lee's words. "What does it want?" "I don't know, Captain. But the readings we're getting, there's something underneath the planet's surface. Something ancient, powerful. The creatures you've encountered, they're part of the planet's response to your presence. Zorath 7's trying to break you, to test you. I think it's waiting for you to make a move, to force you to act out of fear. If you play by its rules, it wins. If you don't, it escalates. It's a game, Alden, and it's not playing fair." Alden's pulse quickened. "So what do we do now?" "Get out. Leave the system, Captain. If you stay, it will only get worse. The longer you're here, the stronger the planet gets. Zorath 7 has absorbed energy from the galaxy for centuries, maybe even longer. It's a predatory world, an apex death world. You won't be able to fight it like a normal enemy. If you stay too long, it'll break you." The urgency in Lee's voice was palpable. Alden's mind was racing now. They had no way of knowing how long Zorath 7 had been waiting for them, watching them. How long it had been evolving, adapting to threats. They had been brought here as part of a test, but now the planet itself was the real enemy. But could they really leave? They had already been pulled into its orbit, and it wasn't letting them go without a fight. "I can't just leave it like this," Alden muttered, more to himself than to Lee. The crew needed answers. They had to understand what they were dealing with, and why they had been brought here in the first place. "Alden, listen to me." Lee's voice broke through his thoughts. "You're not alone in this. We've already sent teams to scout the area, and we found something that might help you. There's an ancient structure on the planet's surface, hidden deep within the mountains. We think it's the source of the anomaly. If you can reach it, maybe you can stop whatever is happening." The mention of the structure caught Alden's attention. A hidden structure. That was new information. "What kind of structure?" "Unknown," Lee responded. "It doesn't appear on any map. We only detected it because of the strange energy readings coming from that location. If you can find it, there may be a way to stop the planet's defense mechanisms. But be careful. The creatures around that area are unlike anything you've seen before. I can't guarantee your safety." Alden let out a slow breath. The decision was clear, but it wasn't easy. They were running out of options, and if they didn't act soon, the planet would have them trapped for good. "Understood. We'll head for the structure, Alden said, his voice steely with resolve. Keep us updated, Lee. We'll make it out of here. Good luck, Captain. We're tracking your position. Just make sure you get there alive. The transmission ended, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence. Alden looked over at Ramirez. We're heading for the mountains. We need to find that structure. Ramirez nodded without hesitation. Aye, Captain. Coordinates locked in. Alden's mind was already racing ahead. The planet had shown them nothing but hostility, and now they were going to walk right into the heart of it. But they had no choice. They needed answers. They needed to understand what Zorath 7 was, and why it was so determined to destroy them. As the ship shifted course, the view outside the cockpit window shifted too. The dark expanse of space gave way to the rocky surface of Zorath 7, now eerily quiet. The once violent tremors and sounds of the planet seemed to recede, as if it were watching them, waiting for them to make the next move. Alden could feel its presence, like a dark eye following them, knowing they were heading straight into the lion's den. Minutes turned into hours as the ship made its way toward the mountains. Alden's thoughts never stopped racing. What would they find at the structure? Was it a weapon, a defense mechanism, or something worse, something they couldn't even begin to understand? As they approached the mountain range, the atmosphere on the ship grew heavier. The team was tense, their nerves frayed by what they had already encountered, and the knowledge that more danger awaited them. Suddenly, a low, rumbling sound echoed through the ship's hull, and the screens flickered. Alden's hands tightened on the controls. What was that? It's coming from the surface, Ramirez said, her voice quiet but tight with concern. Whatever's down there, it's reacting to us. Alden's heart skipped a beat. They were being watched, again. He keyed in the final sequence of coordinates. Brace yourselves. We're entering the danger zone. The ship shuddered as they descended toward the surface, and the mountain range loomed ahead. They were getting closer to the structure, but the planet's power was still there, lurking beneath the surface. Zorath 7 wasn't done with them. In fact, it had just begun. As they approached the unknown structure, Alden couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking straight into the lion's den. And this time, the stakes were higher than ever. The room trembled again. Dust fell from the ceiling, floating in the glowing air like golden ash. Captain Alden stood still, facing the strange translucent being that had emerged from the shadows. Its voice still echoed in his mind, calm, cold, and full of ancient knowledge. The test has only just begun. The team behind Alden, Ramirez, Hughes, and 2 other surviving crew members, tightened their grips on their weapons. But even they knew this wasn't something they could shoot. This wasn't a creature made of muscle and teeth. This was something far older, far more dangerous. It was Zorath 7 itself, speaking through this figure, a voice of the planet. Ramirez took a slow step closer to Alden and whispered, "What do we do, sir? Fight or talk?" Alden's eyes didn't move from the glowing being. "We try to understand. That's why we were sent here." The being tilted its head, studying them. Its body shimmered like liquid metal, pulsing gently with the same energy that lit up the giant sphere in the center of the room. "You do not run," it said. "Most species run. Most cry. Most beg. Humans stand still. Why?" Alden took a breath and stepped forward. "Because we've been tested before. We don't break easily." The room trembled again, this time not in warning, but almost as if the planet was curious. The sphere behind the being pulsed softly. A low hum echoed from the walls. The test was still happening, but in a different way now. "Do you want to destroy us?" Alden asked. The being didn't answer right away. Instead, it turned and walked toward the sphere. "Zorath 7 was made long ago, before your kind walked on your Earth. We were the builders. We made tests, for war, for survival. We wanted to find the strongest minds, the strongest hearts. You're not just a planet," Alden said slowly. You're a machine. A test system. Yes, but not like your machines. We live. We grow. We adapt. Ramirez's eyes widened. You've been doing this for how long? The being faced them again. Millions of your years. Every race that came here was tested. Most failed. Many never left. You are the first in 3,000 years to reach this room. Alden felt the weight of that truth. The planet wasn't trying to kill them for fun. It was measuring them, probing their limits, judging them. Why now? Alden asked. Why bring humans here now? The being stepped closer. The air around it buzzed. Because your kind is growing. Fast, loud. You reach far. You speak war. We wanted to see if you are ready. Alden frowned. Ready for what? The walls shook, not from danger, but like the beating of a giant heart. The sphere behind the being pulsed brighter. Ready to lead, the being said, or ready to destroy. Silence fell. Ramirez exchanged a look with Hughes, both stunned. Are you saying this was never just a test of survival? Alden asked. This was a test of who we are. Yes, your science cannot see what matters most. Fear, courage, anger, sacrifice. We saw it all. The being turned to Ramirez. You protected your people, even when afraid. Then to Hughes. You stayed behind. You faced the beast. You were ready to die. Then to Alden. And you led, even when you were blind to the truth. Alden stepped forward. Then you know, we're not perfect, but we learn. We fight. We survive. The being slowly raised a hand. The glowing sphere responded, splitting open down the center. Inside was something small, shaped like a cube, floating above a pedestal of light. This is your reward, the being said. A key. A key, Alden asked, confused. To the stars, it replied. This world is one of many. There are others like it, dead worlds, each with trials. This is only the first. If you take the key, you accept the challenge. Ramirez stepped beside Alden. We barely survived this one. You want us to do more. Hughes shook his head. We don't even know if we'll make it out alive. The being waited silently. Alden stared at the cube, glowing softly. He felt its pull. Not like a machine, but like a voice, a whisper, a promise. He turned to his team. This isn't just about us anymore. If we leave now, Earth stays the same. Scared, fighting itself. But if we take that, maybe we bring something greater home. Ramirez looked uncertain. And if we fail the next test? Then we fail trying to be more than what we are, Alden said. Silence again. Then slowly, Alden stepped forward and reached out. The moment his fingers touched the cube, light burst from the pedestal, filling the room. The being disappeared in a flash of white. The walls of the structure began to shake, not violently, but like they were falling apart by design. Captain, we need to go, Ramirez yelled. They ran, the hallways collapsing behind them, the structure fading as if it had done its job and was no longer needed. The planet rumbled, not in anger, but in peace, as if it was satisfied. They reached the ship just as the last of the mountain structure dissolved into dust. Alden clutched the cube tightly as they took off, rising through the clouds once again. The planet didn't fight this time. It let them go. Back in space, floating above the deadly world, Alden placed the cube on the dashboard of the ship. It glowed softly, like a sleeping star. Commander Lee's voice crackled through the comms. Alden, are you alive? He smiled, tired but strong. We're alive, and we got something to show you. Lee sounded confused. What happened down there? Alden looked out the window, at the dark planet shrinking below them. We were tested, he said. And I think we passed. The crew sat in silence, staring at the cube. They didn't know what was next, or what the next world would bring. But one thing was clear. Humanity had survived a test built to break civilizations, and not only had they survived, they had earned the next step. Zorath 7 had judged them. And now, the galaxy would have to reckon with humanity.